Single-family homes with high energy use represent significant opportunities for energy and cost savings, yet relatively few energy programs target those subpopulations. Using funding from Minnesota Department of Commerce's Conservation Applied Research and Development Grant, Seventh Wave conducted an in-depth study of 100 Minnesota homes that are high users. The goal of this study were to identify factors contributing to high usage, quantify energy savings associated with common conservation measures, and help identify program strategies that could be used to target those opportunities. I'm Jeanette Lazaks, a researcher on this project. This is the second of 3 videos in this series on this study, and I'm going to be talking today about what happened in the field and hopefully give you a glimpse of the information that we collected in the field to help inform the results of our study. I can't take you on all 100 site visits that we went on, but hopefully I'll be able to take you and tell you about a few of them. I was one of 3 researchers going out into the field during the summer of 2014. We went out to 4 cities in Minnesota: Duluth, Rochester, Cloquet, and Little Falls. At each home that we went to, we spent a few hours in the home. We cataloged anything related to energy use in the home. We conducted a blower door test to test for air leakage, and then we also conducted an interview with the homeowners to understand motivations and awareness of energy issues. Every home was unique. We were armed with some information going into the home. For example, we had energy usage. We knew whether the home was an electric high user or a gas high user. Sometimes they were both, electric and gas high users. We also knew from property tax data whether the home, or what the home square footage was and how old the home was. And finally, we also could look at the home from Google Earth or Google Street View to get a better understanding of the architecture of the home. If you want to find out more about the remote analytics that happened before we went into the home, I suggest that you watch Scott Pigg's video on that'll tell more about that subject. So going into the home, we could surmise potential issues that we might encounter in the home. For example, in Rochester, a home that was relatively new, had low heating energy intensity, but had high electricity usage, I might keep an eye out for high AC usage or potentially plug loads that were causing the electricity high usage. For Duluth, in an older home with high heating intensity and high natural gas usage, I might take a closer look at insulation levels and other heating-related issues. Some homes threw a wrench at us, and we didn't know what we would find going into it. For example, one of the stories that I like to tell around the office, there was this home, large home, relatively new home, high electricity usage, but we couldn't discern an obvious pattern from their electricity usage. Went into the house, talked to the single father with a couple kids. He wasn't around that much. They didn't stay in the house that often, and there wasn't any obvious plug load, so it was deep in the mystery. So I couldn't quite figure out what was going on. As we started talking, he told me that he had on the exterior of his house a high wattage halogen spotlight lighting up a flag that was on every night, all day, or every night, every day of the year, all night long. That's what was causing his electric high usage. We would never have been able to tell without going on a site visit. But besides the technical aspects of the home, we also explored homeowner attitudes and awareness. We spent an hour at the end of the site visit asking the homeowner questions about their perceptions of their utility bill, engagement with utility companies, and a willingness to implement any energy conservation measures or energy efficiency opportunities that we saw in the home during our walkthrough. Overall, we found that people are generally interested in saving money and saving energy. While many felt that their bills were high, they didn't have a sense of how they compared to an average user. The one exception to this is those homes in Rochester that received home energy reports from O-Power. These home energy reports explicitly told them that they were a high energy user compared to their neighbors. Now, it was interesting to hear their reaction to these home energy reports. Some homeowners liked receiving them. It gave them some context in terms of their energy usage, in terms of other people or their neighbors. Other people felt cynical about the numbers. They didn't believe them. They didn't know exactly where they came from, and they didn't feel like it applied to them. Regardless of whether they had a positive or negative feeling about the home energy reports, it is interesting to note that almost all of them noted the energy reports and had some kind of reaction, which in and of itself is an interesting result. Some families didn't know the implications of energy use, of their actions on their energy use. For example, they would use electric space heaters and didn't realize that using electric space heaters in addition to their normal heating system would cause that much more energy usage. They thought they were actually saving money by using electric space heaters to heat up a space. The interviews also allowed us to explore household dynamics, the forces that create challenges or barriers for taking action on energy use. I'll give you a few examples of some of these household dynamics at play. There was a house with another single dad and 3 teens and preteens in a large, drafty home. They were busy with their life. He was busy with his work. He didn't prioritize energy. He prioritized his work and his family, and he knew that he was paying more for energy than he should. He didn't know exactly how much more than he should, but he knew that there were opportunities that he just didn't have time to address, and he recognized that, and he just felt okay paying the extra money and not necessarily do anything about his energy. There's also an older couple that I talked to that had been in their home for over 40 years. They were financially able, likely, to make some energy investments in their home, except they didn't feel that they would see any of the benefits that would come out of those investments. They were reaching the end of their life. As they said, their book was closing. And finally, there was another older man that I talked to. This man had a modest house, but he was living with his son and their family. The older man owned the house, and he paid the electricity bills and the utility bills, but he didn't feel, and he felt that his family, his son and his family, were using a lot of extra energy. They had more plug loads than he wanted, but he didn't feel he didn't have the power to tell them to use less. So that's the kind of dynamics that were at play. But it was really rare to find complete apathy against saving energy. We found that the majority of homes had taken some measure to take some energy efficiency measure in the recent past, and oftentimes they do consider energy when they are making purchases or considering upgrades. They are interested in finding out more about what they can do to save energy, not necessarily the top 100 energy saving tips that you typically get or you hear about. They really wanted something more specific to their situation. For example, there was a household where they were receiving home energy reports. They did know that they were using higher energy than their neighbors, but at the same time they felt that they had done enough in terms of energy efficiency. They didn't know what else they can do, and they didn't really know where to look. So it is interesting to know that there is that feeling that if they had more specific information, then they would be able to take action on it. Overall, there was a positive impression of utility companies, although many families didn't take note of the information that they received as part of a utility bill mailing. So utilities may want to consider multiple ways of reaching out to their customers. So overall, the challenges and issues that surround high energy users really mirror the greater population or an average energy user. If you're interested in finding out more about the high energy user study, I encourage you to watch the other 2 videos in this series, as well as a longer webinar addressing the characterization study that we recorded about a year ago, as well as a recently published report on the Minnesota Department of Commerce's website. And of course, if you have any questions about this particular aspect of the study or any part of the study, I encourage you to email me or contact me or some of my colleagues. Thank you.